We spend about a third of our life sleeping. That means for about 18 hours a day, we're up and trying to get things done. But the sun isn't around that whole time, and therefore it's dark between 3 to 7 hours, depending on what time of year it is. Today I'm going to talk about lighting up your campsite and some of the people in history that made that happen. So stick around as I talk about lanterns, lamps, and lights on this episode of Camping Gear with the Yankee Camper. Since the dawn of time, people have been trying to figure out a way to light up their night in a safe and portable manner. Originally, they'd grab a stick, put it in the fire, and carry that around, but that was neither safe nor efficient. Thousands of years ago, a small bowl made out of stone or shell would have animal fat put into it, and then some kind of a wick, which could be lit and used in caves. Later, a ceramic lamp would be made, which would hold the oil and have a tapered end in which a wick would be put through a hole, which would sit into the oil, would be made out of papyrus or some other fiber. The Romans used these types of lamps, and olive oil. The olive oil would be refined and would burn very cleanly. It was also the Romans who would drape a wick over a stick and dip it multiple times into tallow to make candles. Candles and oil lamps were the primary means of lighting until the discovery of how to utilize electricity. Before we move on with some of the lamps, let's talk about the candle itself. This one is basically wax with a wick. However, it's designed to work in this lantern by UCO. This is a simple lantern in which the base unscrews, the candle goes inside, you light the wick, place the candle up into the chamber, and in the back side, you can see just how much of the candle is left. For storage and to protect the glass, the top collapses and is fully portable. The next type of lamp that I'm going to discuss is this. This is often called a hurricane lamp or a kerosene lamp. This type of lamp was improved by Dietz in the 1840s with a flatter wick, and it used whale oil as a means of fuel. This one is a kerosene lamp, and it can use either kerosene or lamp oil. Now, lamp oil is basically refined kerosene and burns cleaner. So this can be used outside with kerosene or inside with lamp oil. In the early part of the 20th century, William Coffin Coleman developed a pressurized lamp that would deliver fuel both more evenly and burn brighter. These became the forerunners to what we now know as the Coleman lantern. And the Coleman lantern was used for years by outdoor enthusiasts to light up their campsites. Later pressurized Coleman lanterns used white gas, or what we commonly refer to as Coleman fuel, to function. This fuel was also used in stoves, and it's what propelled Coleman to be the major manufacturer of outdoor gear that they are today. I use A different version of the Coleman lantern. This is a propane lantern, and it works along the same principles as the original Coleman lantern, although the gas canister is pressurized with propane, and it feeds the two mantles that you have up top. And it's fully adjustable with this knob. Now, I've used these Coleman propane lanterns for more than 30 years. The advantage of a lantern is it lights the entire area, and so it makes it much easier to see around the campsite. In a moment, I'm going to talk about using electric lamps at your campsite. But first, let me tell you about whaling and the history of whaling oil in the 18th and 19th centuries.
There she blows! In 1850, Herman Melville set out to write a story about whaling. In an effort to write what you know, Melville drew upon his experience aboard a whaler, combined it with the real-life news reports of a white whale attacking ships, and the saga of Essex out of Nantucket that had been attacked by a sperm whale, and 18 months after setting pen to paper at his home in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, Moby Dick was published and flopped. It wouldn't be for another 70 years, 30 years after Melville's death, that the book was recognized for its diversity, friendship, duty, and class structure, as well as a representation of a dwindling trade. In early colonial America, whaling was more of a happenstance than a pursuit. If the large cetacean happened to wind up washed ashore, it would be cut into pieces and oil extracted from the blubber to be used for lighting and lubrication. As the demand for oil increased in America, and fewer whales obliged by stranding themselves, small groups would go out after the large leviathans in small, single-masted sloops when spotted from shore. Once killed, these giant beasts would be dragged back to the shore for processing in a method called trying out. Different whales produced varying quality of oil. Occasionally, a whale would be taken that had all the right properties. It swam slowly, floated when killed, and produced large amounts of quality oil and baleen, also known as whalebone, used as corset stays, basket material, and back scratchers. Because these whales possessed all the right qualities, they became known as right whales. But they were not the best whales. With the advent of industrial machines, the need for lubrication increased dramatically, and the availability of hunting whales from shore couldn't keep up with the demand. By the early 19th century, sailing ships had been going on purpose-focused voyages to hunt whales for more than 40 years. A dirty, messy, disgusting job, the profits could make the ship owner and captain a tidy sum of money. That was until the discovery of petroleum in 1859 in Pennsylvania. Kerosene could be produced at less expense than oil obtained from whales, and petroleum created a wider variety of oils for machinery. A new industry arose as the old faded. Nevertheless, there was a time during which both were available and, in some instances, whale oil was superior to drilled oils. In many cases, however, the quality was on par, and petroleum was more sustainable and didn't spoil. Up until fossil fuels became the norm, the best oil, by far, was from the sperm whale, and this is what Moby Dick was. Inside the head of this giant mammal can be found a wax-like substance known as spermaceti. During its heyday, this was one of the most valuable commodities in that the oil created from it burned very clean and bright. The candles produced using spermaceti oil was also highly prized in that they burned a bright flame. So much so that a measurement we still use today is based on the output of brilliance from a single spermaceti candle. Candle power. Now you know.
In this segment, I'm going to talk about lamps. Lamps are a little bit different than lanterns in that lanterns are designed to brighten a huge area, whereas lamps sort of brighten up a smaller area like a table or something along those lines. Now, the problem with lanterns is that they get hot. And even the UCO candle lantern gets hot. And you don't want to bring that into a nylon tent. If it happens to fall up against the side, it's going to create a problem. It's going to develop a hole. It's just bad news bringing a candle or heated lantern into a tent. A lamp brightens a smaller area. And they're typically battery powered, so you don't have that problem of bringing them inside of the tent with you. The first one that I'm going to talk about, this is a small battery powered lamp. It's put out by Coleman. It's got 3 settings. It's bright, less bright, and a flash. The flash just works as a warning. It gives you that ability if you're looking to get attention of somebody, it will help you move that out. Now the back side of this is dark, so all of the light goes out this way. This lamp is battery operated. It uses 3 AA batteries. I typically travel with this not in here so that it doesn't start to corrode. And I also carry 3 additional AA batteries so that I always have power for this. I like its small, compact size. It's got a little ring at the top that you can hang. Sometimes if I'm car camping, like camping in my car, I will hang this from the coat hanger hook inside the door, and so that I can easily find it. The next lamp that I want to talk about is this one here, and this actually belonged to my parents. This is over 50 years old. It's not particularly bright, but it works really nice at a table. We played a lot of games using this inside the camper. It just unscrews. And it uses a standard 6-volt battery. I've seen these for sale at yard sales or maybe at a thrift store. They're not particularly expensive. It's a nice thing to have. It's a little more traditionally styled. It'll sit on a table, either in your tent or in your car, if you're staying in your car, and it can sit on a picnic table, give you a little bit of light to work by. The last lamp that I'm going to talk about, this is a Ryobi 1 Plus. It has only 2 settings, high and low. I like the fact that it's easy to carry. It lights up fairly bright, and it puts out what claims is 130 lumens. One of the reasons that I like this particular lamp is because it uses the 1 Plus battery. So this is very lightweight to carry. This is completely rechargeable. There are a number of other lamps on the market. They all essentially work the same way. It's up to you using batteries or rechargeable. Some devices recharge with a USB port. There's all sorts of options, but you should have some kind of an electric light and be able to use it inside of your tent. Before I move on to lights, I want to share with you a story about a town in western Massachusetts that laid the groundwork for the electricity that now comes into your house.
Any device with batteries uses direct current, or DC. Your house supplies alternating current, or AC. AC/DC is a band that gave us Thunderstruck and Highway to Hell, but let's skip that. There was also a war between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison about which current type was better. George Westinghouse ultimately backed Tesla. He was confident in the technology because of the proof he had seen performed by his employee William Stanley. During the War of the Currents in the 1880s and 90s, there was no clear method for delivering electricity to homes and businesses. Edison was convinced that direct current was the answer, but it couldn't be delivered over long distances and required a large number of local power stations. Westinghouse, believing Tesla, understood that alternating current could be sent over long distances, but this required very high voltages. Like, you die if you touch it high voltages. Stanley developed a means to transform the high voltages to more manageable voltages with regulated power in transformers. No, not those transformers. These transformers. AC electricity can travel great distances with minimal loss, but also requires high voltage. Voltage can be thought of as the pressure of electricity. The more voltage, or pressure, the further it can be pushed. Tapping along the way requires the voltage to be stepped down through transformers. In 1886, Westinghouse financed Stanley's work to move the town of Great Barrington, an affluent community in Stanley's family residence, from Edison's DC power to AC power using Stanley's redesigned, more efficient transformers and Siemens AC generators tied to Westinghouse steam engines. These powered many homes and businesses along Main Street. This Massachusetts town was the first to prove the use of alternating current was safe and a viable commodity. It was also what led Westinghouse to believe that AC was the best option when bidding for the contract, around 10 years later, harnessing the water power of Niagara Falls to turn turbines, creating electricity not only for New York, but much of the eastern seaboard. William Stanley had a falling out with George Westinghouse and opened his own electric company in 1890 in neighboring Pittsfield, Mass. It's possible that Melville's former home, Arrowhead, where he wrote Moby Dick, was electrified by Stanley's company. In 1903, Stanley became disgusted by all the lawsuits for patent infringement within the electrical industry and sold his power company to General Electric, Westinghouse's rival. 10 years later, after experimentation with using steel instead of glass to create a vacuum thermos, William Stanley built a new company that produced all-metal beverage containers to keep drinks hot throughout the day, known as the immediately recognized green Stanley vacuum bottle, still used by campers today. Now you know.
So in this segment, we're going to talk about lights, primarily flashlights. Now, growing up, almost every house had a flashlight like this. This one's pretty beat up, and it has a large sealed beam. More practical was a flashlight like this. And this has two settings. If you put this into the middle, you can press this button and you're able to send signals, including, if you know it, Morse code. This flashlight has some heft to it, and it's very durable, made of metal. In the 1970s, these types of flashlights came out. Now this particular one will take two D-size batteries. And they work fairly well. The problem is that the batteries go inside And a lot of times it gets forgotten about, and by the time you need to use it, the batteries just aren't functional. Now, when I was camping as a kid, we had a small portable flashlight. It had a sealed battery. It was all plastic. It's called the Life Light. Garrity still puts these out, and they work very well. They don't require recharging. They're designed to just get thrown away when you're done with them. So two advantages over these types of flashlights that the Garrity Lifelight had is that, one, you didn't have to replace the batteries. Two, it would stand up. And so you had the ability, unlike this flashlight, which could either go this way or this way, but standing, it was very unstable. Sometimes it would fall over. The Garrity Lifelight would stand at a table at a 45-degree angle and sort of light up a small area. Now, a replacement to that sealed beam I showed you at the beginning is something like this. This is a all plastic body, and it also uses a 6-volt battery. And put this battery in, and I'll show you how that looks. So the battery just slides in like that. It's got a wire that connects with one of the coils on the outside. You screw the cover back in with the beam, and that gives you a well handheld light that's of a decent size and has a good battery capacity. In the late 1970s, Meg came out with a flashlight that was made of anodized aluminum as opposed to plastic. Much more durable. This is the Mini Mag, and I'm going to show you how it looks. I don't know if you can see that on the beam on the wall, but it has the ability to focus the light either in a spread or in a narrow beam. Meg intended these flashlights to be used for personal security, and a lot of fire and policemen adopted them because of their heavy weight, their functionality, and their durability. Similar Meg lights are carried by first responders still to this day. And of course, your cell phone has a flashlight in it. One of the issues about using your cell phone flashlight is that it will drain the battery. And if you're out camping and you have a difficult way of recharging your battery, you may be compromising your safety by using up the battery for your flashlight when you may need that battery usage in the event of an emergency. Personally, I would recommend against that. It's okay if you need to look at something really quick, but I would hesitate using your cell phone as your primary flashlight. There are a lot of rechargeable flashlights on the market these days that plug into USB. Again, those work really well and they hold a charge for a long time. And I'm not recommending that you don't get one of those. The difference between that and a battery-powered one is that you can always carry spare batteries. Sometimes it's difficult to recharge a rechargeable USB device unless you have something like a portable battery inverter or something along those lines. I'll talk about those in a future episode. Of course, you can always get one of these. Now this, as you can see, it has no power. But what it does have is it's got a little crank on the side. It's a dynamo. And this will charge small battery. I'm just going to crank this for a minute. And now you have a flashlight that will hold a charge for a little while, and if you need to recharge it, you just crank it again. A nice additional feature to this is that it's got a little compass on the top. I don't know how functional that really is, but I suppose it's better than nothing if you're lost in the woods. The last flashlight I'm going to talk about is this one here. I've added a little tag to it so that I can find it easily. It's just a small little giveaway, but it works pretty well if you're in your tent and you're just trying to find where something is. You don't need to light up the whole tent. You just need, sort of a little beam. The difference between a flashlight and a lamp is that flashlights tend to be just unidirectional in a small beam so that you can see what's ahead of you, but not necessarily everything that's around you. I'd like to talk a little bit about flashlight etiquette. When you're in a campground and you're walking, just be aware that your flashlight can interrupt other people's conversations and be always pointed toward you about 10, 12 feet in front of you. Don't be swinging your arms when you're walking with it. Don't be flashing it around into the trees. Don't be looking into other people's campsites with it. That's just not appropriate. If you're out in the woods and you're looking around and you're trying to see if you hear a noise or something, looking through the woods is fine. But in a campground, you should keep your beam low. And one of the things that you need to be aware of, especially if you're wearing one of these, this is a headlamp, is when you're looking around with this headlamp on, you're pointing in all of the directions. This headlamp should be adjustable so that it's always pointing toward the ground. And that's the same way with a hat lamp. A hat lamp, which goes on the brim of your hat, should also always be pointing towards the ground. Don't be pointing it out far straight ahead so that you can see what's in front of you, but not way down and disturbing other campers. And in the same way, be aware if you're using something like this. This is a Stanley Fat Max. Has nothing to do with the Stanley Cup Company, Stanley Tools. You see it's got a little stand. It's able to stand up on its own like that. It's adjustable so that you can stand it so that it's pointing further up or further out. Now the Fat Max is a high-powered beam. It's got two settings. It's got a high beam and a lower beam. And it's pretty powerful. The Fat Max is rechargeable. And one of the problems with the Fat Max is it has a proprietary type charger. It uses a 120 volt transformer down to 12 volts and it plugs in the back. Just like that. So this can be recharged using a standard household outlet. A lot of times they're not available at tent campsites. So just be aware of that. But it holds the charge for a fairly long time. And the last flashlight that I want to talk about is this one here. Now I carry this occasionally, especially if I think it's going to be dark. It's a bit of overkill. However, it uses the same battery that I use in the camp lamp. It's trigger powered, so it's either on or off. You can lock it on with a little lock button, and to release the lock, you just press the trigger and it clicks it off. So that's everything I have on flashlights and flashlight etiquette. I hope you'll consider that. If you have any questions about flashlights or any type of lights, feel free to reach out. I have a lot more lighting that I didn't show in the video. This flashlight will put out 2,800 lumens. That's a lot of light. I've seen flashlights that will put out over 100,000 lumens. You know, my opinion, if you need that much light, out in the woods, get a hotel. To finish up, I'd like to talk about the actual filaments inside of the light bulb and how those came to be through a gentleman by the name of Lewis Latimer.
Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Everybody knows that. Well, actually, he improved the arc lamp, which had been around for about 70 years. These lights had several drawbacks. They were very bright, making them unsuitable for homes. They were very hot, making them unsafe to touch. And they emitted carbon monoxide, which could kill you, typically frowned upon for gaining repeat customers. Edison tried numerous filaments inside a vacuum-sealed bulb to create a light which would last longer than a few hours. He and his team eventually settled on carbonized bamboo, which could last up to 1,200 hours, or more than 3 months with regular use. Shortly afterward, Lewis Latimer, working for another Edison rival, Hiram S. Maxim, came up with and patented a method for creating bulb filaments out of carbon fiber that was more durable than Edison's. This made the light bulb feasible for everyday people and helped propel electric lighting safely into people's homes. These were the favored filament material for around 25 years until GE introduced tungsten as an even more durable material available in 1911. Lewis Latimer was born in Chelsea, Massachusetts in 1848 to former slaves. He attended grade school, but was mostly self-taught. After the Civil War, in which he served in the Navy, he went to work as an office boy at a Boston firm specializing in American and foreign patents. Here he picked up drafting skills, eventually rising to the position of draftsman for the firm. It was in this role that he was called upon to create drawings for a communication device by a client, Alexander Graham Bell. Lewis also created and patented an improved toilet system used on trains. This continued to give him street cred as an inventor and designer. In 1880, at Bridgeport, Connecticut, Hiram Maxim hired Latimer as an engineer and draftsman to compete against Edison. Unable to financially outmaneuver Edison legally, Maxim went on to create the first machine gun, under backing by Vickers Corporation of England. He also created the captive flying machine still in operation at Blackpool, England, and copied for use at theme parks and carnivals around the world. Edison was so impressed with Latimer's ability that he brought him on as an expert in patent submissions and drawings, assisting with many of Thomas Edison's inventions. The New England native also created an evaporative device for cooling, which was a precursor to today's air conditioning. Lewis Latimer retired in 1924 and passed away in Flushing, New York in 1928 at the age of 80. In 2006, he was inducted into the U.S. National Inventors Hall of Fame. Now, you know. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Yankee Camper on lanterns, lamps, and lights, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing to my channel where I try to bring you a new video every week. If you have any thoughts on what you've seen or something you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.